From SCNR, Governor Glenn Youngkin signs election security order. Directive ensures only paper ballots are used and no counting machines are internet connected. So it's not, my understanding, it's not going to be all paper ballots. Oh, no, it says, notably under Executive 35, Youngkin directs state election officials to ensure that only paper ballots are used in Virginia and are retained for 22 months after each election. Additionally, the commissioner of the Department of Elections is required to ensure there is a documented chain of custody for paper ballots and a daily reconciliation process during early voting. During the early voting period on Election Day, ballots must be reconciled against the number of voters checked into the polling location and against the number of ballots that were mailed to voters. The state is also prohibited from sending out an absentee ballot unless it has been requested by a registered voter before being mailed. Completed absentee ballots may not be counted until the last 4 digits of the voter's social security number and year of birth on the envelope are matched to the voter's record file. How much do you want to bet Virginia goes heavy red?
Gonna happen.
It's going to be like +7 red.
Probably.
What do you mean? You don't want illegals and dead people voting in elections?
Or just the ballot harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with paper ballots, only these locations, Democrats, outside of whether they, I think we are seeing with the work permits a real risk that people are going to accidentally register illegal immigrants.
For sure.
But even outside of that, nursing homes.
Mm-hmm.
Famously, Democrats going to nursing homes and these elderly people who are just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, just fill it out. James O'Keefe had the video of all this stuff. They do this with this policy. Should this succeed in the courts? Because I bet Democrats are going to sue him to oblivion. But he's playing 4D chess over here. You know why? What he's doing at the executive level with the elections, Republicans challenged Democrats doing the same thing in 2020, and the court said no standing.
Right.
Let's see if the courts in Virginia say the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if nah, you're Republican, so you lose instantly. But that being said, only paper ballots, I'm willing to bet the whole state just red across the board.
I think there's a good chance.
In more places.
Yeah.
Are there other states that have a similar initiative in place right now? I'm trying to think.
Not that I've heard of, but they should be.
Come on, governors. There is time.
I don't want to speak incorrectly. I think some states are in the works of making this.
Because that would be interesting. If I would like it to be set up so that there are several states doing this so we can really test this out. I mean, will states that have paper ballots like this see a notably different result than in years past and to states neighboring them?
Right.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to tell, too, since this election is, the last election of the United States. It's been billed, so it could be just a higher turnout than usual.
They always say that, though. This is the thing about this dramatic messaging. I just get so tired of it. Like, it's the last one. They're ending
2012 was the
democracy.
last one.
Okay.
That's when the
then
world
why
ended,
did
you're
I
saying?
vote later?
Or is that when the last election was?
Democrats didn't accept 2016 and Republicans didn't accept 2020.
Yeah.
So the last election we had was 2012.
Yeah.
And that's where people were like, oh, wow, look at that, Obama won.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
When do we get back to a place where we just agree?
I don't think that's possible.
I agree with you.
I think as people get older, the younger generations are polarized all the same. And I've said this time and time again, the only reason the country isn't completely ripped to shreds is because Gen Xers, Boomers, and Silent Generation have lower rates of polarization. Once the Silent Generation ages out, passes on, then you're going to have the next generation moving in. Polarization will become more pronounced. By the time when Gen Xers are in their 70s, millennials are going to be in their 50s and 60s, you are going to have hyper bipartisanship, geographic, country will be absolutely split and irreparably. Like you literally have people who want to sterilize and chop off kids' junk. Okay, there's no reconciling the political values between these people.
Right.
I think there are some issues. So you go.
I was just going to say, I think there's a way to have these conversations, though. I think there's a way to have these hard conversations and come to some common sense, common ground, because believe it or not, we actually would agree on most of these issues. But you have the extremists, I think, that are making the most noise.
What's hard, though, I have 2 kids, a third on the way, maybe any minute now. And so I might run out of here, but we'll see. Is when
That's
you
why I watch TBS show every night in August, so we have to see it right now.
when you meet other parents who believe in the mutilation stuff and giving your kids all these things, there's no coming together.
But
Like,
you know where it starts? It starts with what Tim said, these young generations. It starts with Gen Zers right now, who, by the way, they are furious with what's happening. They want God. They want faith as a centerpiece.
Right.
They want to invest in the family unit once again. They want to have less fatherless households.
Right.
So it's a combination of things, all of those centerpieces, right?
So that's good for the future.
Right.
Like the immediate future, with the parents now, they are raising other kids who are going to grow up to be, who knows how they're going to vote, but they're legitimately
immediate future scary. What Tim was saying, when millennials are in their 50s and 60s, I think there's still hope before we get there.
I agree.
To see how this next generation coming up behind mine is willing to have these conversations.
And I think there are some cultural shifts on issues that are more ambiguous. Like, each side will say, oh, this is our issue, but people feel differently. Like, I think with crime in the U.S., there actually are lots of moderate, maybe lean left people who are starting to say, like, maybe the border is slightly weird. Or the one that I think of a lot is the marijuana issue, right? Like, we as a country have radically shifted our position on marijuana, both for medical use and recreationally. And part of it is because I think especially the youngest generation, but we look at it differently than older generations. Like if you talk to younger people about it, they're like, but then why is alcohol allowed when marijuana isn't? And this one's addictive, and there's a bigger conversation. Not to mention that people are now starting to say, like, we should research marijuana and see what its effects are for, potential treatment. I think some of these cultural changes that are actually happening on both sides, there are some issues that stop being like, you're for this and we're against it. There are some that actually these generations have in common.
Well, you guys might disagree, but I think one of those issues is actually abortion. I might get canceled for saying this, but I have a lot of girlfriends in New York, contemporaries, peers, colleagues that are female, and they have felt for so long like we are being erased. We're not allowed to be a conservative. We don't belong to either party because of those beliefs. But when you're actually paying attention to Donald Trump's policy and how moderate he really is on abortion, a lot of my girlfriends are pro-choice, and it's really hard. It was really hard for a while to convince women that you have a space in this.
And that's where Trump loses me, is I wish he was harder on it. As someone who's gone super pro-life after a long time of pro-choice, but like I still want to vote for him.
Right.
Although it's not making it easy for me because I really disagree with that, and that is really important.
But there's a coalition of pro-choice or pro-life Democrats, right? Who say, why does this have to be a plank in our central platform? Right. It's interesting because there are people who do not line up on either issue. The other one that I'm thinking about is the environment. The left is always saying the environment is our issue, but have you ever talked to a farmer? Like they have a lot at stake with the environment. I bet that they feel really strongly about it. They just don't conclude what you conclude, which is that it needs to be regulated at the federal level and certain things need to happen and that we shouldn't.
It was a Republican that gave us the national parks, the state parks, Eddie, and Nixon did EPA, which I don't agree with, but the left loves, Right,
but for some reason it's always billed as like a left issue. Only the lefts are interested in the environment. They have a certain bent on how they want to handle the environment, but I don't think that's true. I think there are lots of especially rural Americans who care very deeply about preserving the natural beauty of this country and the natural resources.
Right. I think another one is all the bigs, right? Big tech, big pharma, big government. I think you're seeing people from both sides of the aisle asking questions.
That's why a lot of people who are disaffected left are going for RFK Jr.
Exactly.
But like, there are so many people I grew up with who are leftist or liberal, who are against big pharma. Like I always was, but it stopped at COVID, because then all of a sudden they became, we got to do all this. We love Pfizer.
I think there's still a good amount of Americans out there that are starting to question the status quo.
Oh yeah.
They're starting to question what they've been told. And that's happening on both sides. So it's becoming less of a Republican or Democrat issue. These are just people, like human race issues now.
When you look at polling on civics, economics, independents align with Republicans 2-1. Democrats, for some reason, think the economy is good. Probably because they're watching MSNBC and they're being told everything is fine. Go back to sleep.
Or because they're Hollywood liberals and they'll always be fine.
No, but these are all general Democrats. These are people living in cities. What could possibly make them think the economy is good? I honestly don't know. Young people can't afford to live anywhere. They can't buy houses. They can't start families.
Nope.
I wonder how many have children. Like if there's so many
look
people,
at the fertility rates.
That's probably
there's a lot of, like we talk about the restroom thing, how that's changed. I think a lot of people who don't have children aren't really truly seeing how bad it is.
Of
And
course
there you
not.
go. Independents with kids are going, the economy sucks right now.
Right.
And liberals and Democrats who largely are having less kids are like, everything's fine.
Are we allowed to call them like white women that are cat ladies? Like, I don't know if we're allowed to say that anymore. But yeah, these single females that are living in big blue cities, of course they think everything's fine.
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
They have no plans to get into a serious relationship or start a family and or any of these core values that our country made our country great.
Well, and they don't have to do things like plan for someone else's future, right? When you have that kind of responsibility, and part of that is financial as well.
You may notice the economy sucks.
It feels extremely different. And I think sometimes, people, I think it's really common for people to adjust to inflation, right? They get used to paying more. So if you're only paying more for yourself, like, it's annoying, it's expensive, but you adjust. When you're like, no, it's really hurting us every time half of our household doesn't have an income, aka their children, this is tough, we don't like it. I think it's just a different mindset that you aren't in unless you're in it.
Because you have to feed and clothe other people
who are not paying
fully
rent.
dependent on you. Right, not paying rent. What the heck?
It's also just not part of their future plan, right? Like, I have a lot of single friends right now, but we're all worried because that's our future plan. First of all, it's how am I going to find a man and all this sea of soy boys out there? So that's number one issue that we're worried
Good
about.
name for your book, The Sea of Soy Boys.
I could definitely write a few novels on that. And then number two, how are we eventually going to buy a home? How are we going to start a family? When was the last time an entire generation was fearful that they won't be able to buy a home? An entire generation coming out with more degrees on paper, but zero life skills and zero chance at the American dream. So it's also that they're not looking at the future, and that's why the economy collapsing is not a worry.
Do you think they were prepared for the future? I'm thinking about this because I wrote today about Alabama has this law that's going to affect where there's like 1,800 third graders who might have to repeat the year because they don't reach a certain literacy standard that just got implemented.
Classic America.
I was kind of researching, well, they're trying to do something about it, which I appreciate, you know? But one of the things I was reading about when I was writing this was that they have instituted a mandatory personal finance course for high schoolers in Alabama. And I think that's interesting, right? If you learned about how taxes work, how saving works,
are you kidding?
What credit card debt can do to you in high school, you would probably react differently. So often I hear from my single friends or my friends who are just, married, but they don't have kids yet, like, oh, well, we'll just deal with this later. When you have kids, there's kind of no later.
Oh, my poor mother, she would be ecstatic if she knew this is what they were teaching, because they were not teaching this when I was in high school. And I call her every time I need to do my taxes and I have all these silly math questions. And she's like, what? She's Canadian, so she just doesn't understand the system here.
What part of Canada is she from?
Born in Montreal, raised in Toronto.
Cool.
A lot of my family's still there, but
my family's from Newfoundland.
Oh, okay. I mean, we have different issues that we don't agree on with that side of the family, but the education system here in America, no, I don't think most Americans are educated enough to understand financial planning, let alone what it actually takes to save up enough money to buy a home, buy a car, provide, right? So that's really... Honestly, that's hopeful.
But then we say you're 18, you must go to college, otherwise your life will fall apart. Sign here on this line.
Biggest mistake I've made
in
so
huge
far,
amounts of debt.
Be a slave.
It's crazy.
Be a slave.
But we don't train that. Like, if you're not being taught basic financial literacy, why would you? No one should let you take out these loans.
I think it's by design that they don't.
Of course,
teach
it's
financial
all of
literacy.
this is by design. It's all meant to brainwash and distract us from what matters. But that's why I have hope right now with this young generation, right? I'm a millennial, but this Gen Z generation coming up behind me, like I was alluding to before, I think they're redefining the answer to that question, what matters?
Yeah.
And what is that? It is starting a family. It's connecting with another soul. It's spirituality. It's your health. It's escaping that 9-to-5 matrix. And this education system is also something they're starting to question, right? Everything that we've been told. So that really gives me hope.
Imagine growing up in a household where your parents are literally telling you have 12 years to live because the sun, the sky, like with I forget what that movement was called, the Sunrise Movement. They had their children holding a banner that said we have 12 years to live. That's a death cult. That's scaring your children. So either they're going to lean into that and then join the cult, or they're going to push back. And I do see a lot of that. I say, even in New York, where I'm from here now, but I see a lot of people in New York who are younger than me or my age, and
I'm moving here now.
It's awesome here.
It's great.
It's free here.
I saw 20 farms. I'm in. Sign me up.
There's a lot of cows.
Find me a cowboy.
But nothing is open after 9 o'clock.
Well, yeah, you should be home with your family by
That's
Santa
so
Claire.
true. There's no
bedtime.
wilding for the young. Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe and we'll see you all there.